So, hi.
Hi.
Thank you for meeting us, and maybe we could start with a brief introduction about who you are, and then we can go on with some spicy questions. So, nice to meet you. You are?
Klaus Welle.
And if you were to tell me who you are without telling me what you do, what would you say?
I'm politically active.
Nice, nice. And who were you before your role in the European Parliament? And we will delve into it later.
Yeah, I had many roles. I've been politically active since I've been 16 years old, so in fact 1918 during the national campaign. But politically thinking already before. I remember I struggled when I was in the football club with another one of our players, and he was with the Young Socialists and I was with the Young Christian Democrats. So that's something which has marked me a long time. And then you have different roles in which you, can use this kind of interest and capacity.
Okay. And so you said that you started really early, around your 16 years old, already gaining experience and exposure to politics. And what first drew you to politics? What is the first political memory that you have in your life?
The first political memory I have were the lost elections for the CDU in 1972. My parents were mourning, so to say. The television was switched off.
Yeah.
I was 8 years old at the time, and so it marked that an election is something which is really important, not only for those who are elected or not elected, but for the whole population.
Okay, so really something that stems from your family and from your background as a really young child. And when you then came into politics, you have had, as you said, many roles. So you were appointed Secretary General of the European People's Party, which is the biggest party in Europe, even now with the highest number of MEPs within the European Parliament. And then you also had the very important role of Secretary General for the European Parliament. And as we know, it's a very important institutional role. So if there were any decisions that you made that make you still uncomfortable today, could you share them? And how was it for you to take them? Do you still think about them?
Maybe let me add to the previous question.
Yeah.
That I've always, let's say, the formative years were as a youth activist.
Okay.
Both in the Catholic youth and in the Christian Democrat youth. And I started as the deputy responsible for taking the notes in my village organization up to the European level. So these have been my formative years. Have there been decisions I was uncomfortable with? You have to consider, you have to reflect, you have to discuss, you have to consult, and then you take your decisions. Of course, there were difficult decisions, especially during COVID, because at that moment, some of the decisions I just had to take on my own, together with the president maybe, but we could not have a formal procedure with the bureau because the virus wasn't waiting for us.
Yeah, and it was a hard time also for the population maybe to understand why certain things were done in a certain way. And so I can imagine that for you the weight was even heavier to carry. And as you said, you had a long way up to your role as Secretary General. And I find it very interesting because in reading a recent publication you made, you tell about your first days in office in the European framework, so the first days in office as Secretary General of the European People's Party. And people often think of, politicians as a world that is very comfortable or even luxurious. But in your book you say, quote, it started with a rather rude welcome. My deputy told me that whatever ideas I had, I should forget them. There was no money, and to underline that point, new paper would not be available. We all had to write on the back paper that had already been used. And I find this anecdote very, let's say, personal and also very sweet. And I would like to know if you could share what you remember about those times and how did you make it through those times?
Yeah, I think Secretary General always has to combine the organizational role, but also the role of political advice. So if the organization is not performing, you will not go very far on the political side either. So I had prepared to that function. I had 2-3 months where I knew this would be coming up to me. And I had a plan in my head how we could change the financial situation, how we could change the organizational situation, so that I didn't have to accept the status quo as a fact, and we did.
Yeah. And when you changed both the political and the financial situation, you often share your method. There was a financial method basically applied to politics, which was basically the M&A method of building the party. And I find this also very interesting. Is it something that stems from your education, or was it an illumination and inspiration that you had to apply, let's say, merger and acquisitions to a party? How did it go?
Yeah, I use the expression merger and acquisition also because it's a bit of fun. You know? But it's not far from reality either. So when I studied at Wittenherdecke University, which was a newly established university. I was only the third year student, you know, there were only 2 years before me. And we studied new political economy or institutional economics. And in that frame of economic thinking, you are allowed to apply the economic model, which is about constraints. On all sectors of society, not just to so-called the economy. So in that sense, it had liberated our thinking, my thinking as well. So let's say traditionally you're not thinking when you have this kind of management role in terms of mergers and acquisitions, but I was allowed to.
This very wide and free thinking that you applied to political parties and growing political parties, it's something that has always characterized you. And your long-term vision has always characterized you as Klaus Welle, not only like as a Secretary General, but also as a person. And indeed, also Politico writes about you that, again, I quote, "What is striking about him in the EU context, where the protagonists are so often at the mercy of events and stumble from crisis to crisis, is that he has long-term goals that he worked and works towards relentlessly." And how do you do this, even in critical times? How can you keep a forward-looking and long-term looking vision?
It's maybe easier in critical times, because in critical times it's becoming clear that things have to change. So that means others are also more ready to change. But it's true, I always had a long-term vision, also a political vision, where I would like the European Union to develop to, and the institutions, European political parties, but also the Parliament. And crisis times are the moments where this becomes possible, because the status quo is becoming untenable.
And in fact, I also found another interesting motto that you shared during a speech in 2013, referring to this double face of crisis, which are from Greek crisis means also opportunity. You once said, referring to the European Parliament, our motto could be, "We have no chance, but we use it." And I really like this motto, and I think it's something that also for the European youth is very useful. But could you explain it further? How were you able to transform lack of chances in multitude and plenty of chances?
Yeah, I believe that the different European institutions have a different culture, and this has to do with the opportunities that were given at the beginning. And Parliament, besides some budgetary powers, was relatively weak. So you develop this kind of underdog culture. Nothing is given for free. Governments will not share decision-making with you. The European Union doesn't receive decision-making by the member states who try to protect their own sovereignty. So if you're in such a situation, the only way to develop is to grasp opportunities, otherwise you fall by the wayside. And maybe I can take also an example from the German context. when Chancellor Adenauer was informed by the supreme powers about now the possibility for German sovereignty, he was told in advance to not step onto the carpet, because the carpet was reserved for the allies who had won the war, and he stepped on the edge of the carpet. So he kind of respected, but not respected, and said, look, we have to go a step further. And the whole parliamentary history is a history where parliaments are getting nothing for free, but they have to fight for it, and they have to be intelligent, they have to be creative, they cannot just rely on the status quo. So council can believe that they are fine with the status quo. Parliament can never be happy with the status quo.
Thank you. Thank you for this inspiring answers. And I would like to pass on a maybe more personal question, because throughout the years of your career, people named you in various ways. So you were called Prince of Darkness, the most talented strategist I have ever come across, or even the brain behind the throne, the archetype of a behind-the-scenes fixer. And I wanted to hear from you, what surname do you identify with? Or if you don't identify with these nicknames that were given to you, is there another one you would give to yourself?
I think strategist is nicest.
Okay,
So
fair.
I probably go for that.
Okay.
But you see, in the functions I had, especially being Secretary General, you are the linkage between the organization and the political level. And the political level is expecting from you, one, that the organization works properly, but also advice, at least if your personal relationship is good. And if that advice is taken, you have influence. So I think that's the background. So over the past 30 plus years that I've been in Brussels, I regularly was in this situation that presidents were looking for my advice, they were trusting on my organizational skills, but then this gives you also political influence. Of course, it's always then the member who decides and who should decide, or the President of Parliament who should decide. But they need advice and they want advice, and that's the interesting thing in my role as Secretary General of Parliament, Secretary General of the party. You are expected to not just be implementing, you're expected to come up with ideas, with innovation, provide different options or solutions to the political decision makers. If you have no solutions to offer, you will not be put into these kind of functions.
You said a very interesting word that I would like to build on, because you mentioned the word influence. And sometimes influence is perceived as something very vague, a very abstract concept. But what is influence for you, considering also that the Secretary General is a role that usually has less visibility than other political roles? So how would you explain to an external actor what influence is in your previous role, and how you would define this concept in general?
I'm very impressed by Max Weber's article, Politics as a Profession, and there he describes who is a politician, and a politician are those who have impact on the distribution of power in the system. And he names journalists. Many of them try to have impact on the distribution of power in the system. Also high-level servants of political parties. Also the political level of the administration. In the European institutions, the political level are the directors, general directors, secretary general, who are appointed directly by political organs and who can be dismissed directly by political organs, like you have with state secretaries on the national level as well. And then, of course, elected members of parliament. So in that sense, Max Weber knew that there is a political function because you have an impact on the distribution of power in the system. What you make available to the President and the Bureau is basically a vision of where the organization could move. You underpin this with finance, with the budget. The Secretary General of the European Parliament proposes the budget of the European Parliament. The Bureau accepts it, the Budget Committee has to accept it, then it goes into the legislative procedure. But the first proposal on this is coming from the Secretary General. The proposal on nominations of general directors is coming from the Secretary General after, let's say, a group has had a look at the different candidatures. But your vision of where the organization should go or could go will be very important. If it's innovative, creative, it's making the organization stronger. If you don't have a vision, you fall back in comparison to the other institutions.
And I think your vision was also very, very clear, because not a lot of people know that there was a strong will on your behalf to have some important exhibition centers like the Parliamentarium and the Museum of European History. So I think you succeeded in that, and I'm very happy that you could also, with your role and your influence, create spaces that are thought of for citizens and for citizens' engagement. And regarding citizens' engagement, and citing also the article of Weber that you were mentioning, so politics as a profession, in which he talks about this eternal conflict in doing politics, because you don't have to live out of politics in order to do good politics, but you have to live for politics. So it entails also being able to self-sustain yourself. What would you say to a young person engaging in politics now, in the current political scenario? What would be?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is derived directly from this article of Max Weber, Politics as a Profession. And there the answer is there are many ways into politics. Elected member is one. Leading civil servant is another one, or civil servant is another one. To go into the party administration is a third one. Journalism is another one. And we nowadays would say NGOs are another one.
Yes.
Or maybe organizations of professional interest. So I think for young people, I meet a lot, students.
Yeah.
I mean, visiting Professor Land School of Economics, Karl Löwen. Yeah. So they come to me and say, look, I would like to engage. How can I do that? And I think it's for them a relief to know that there's not just one way forward, because a lot depends on accidents. So you can take a direction, but then your final function can take different forms, or different forms at different moments. And for many, this is helpful to think about their political engagement in this way.
And a lot of people, as you said, call on you to go and to engage with them. And so we could say that, and I am the first one, I had the luck to meet you, and I have now the luck to interview you and to share this time with you. So we could say that a lot of people are thankful to you for your thoughts and your conversation. But is there a person you are thankful to for your career and your path, and even for other things that maybe differ from your professional career?
I mean, when I was Secretary General of Parliament, I put 2 photos behind my desk, which stayed there for nearly 14 years. One was a photo with Helmut Kohl, and the other one was a photo with Jacques Delors. So they have been my inspiration. Nowadays, I would probably add a photo of Jean Monnet, given that the European Parliament is owning the House of Jean Monnet, and in my time we made it a kind of conference center also for the young people and everybody joining the European Parliament administration. So if I have to single out one, I would say Helmut Kohl has been my inspiration, because he was never looking at the opinion poll of the day. He had a historical vision where to go, and he knew that Europe was critical to have a peaceful future for the continent.
When you said you had these 2 pictures in your office, it feels like your office for a long time became also your new home, your second home. And so how was it for you to leave that office and to start off with something new?
It was okay, because I've done it several times. People now look at me maybe as the Secretary General of the European Parliament, but I've been heading European and Foreign Affairs in CDU's central office.
Yeah.
I was Secretary General of the EPP party, of the EPP group, General Director, Head of Cabinet. So in fact, it's true that this was the longest function, nearly 14 years. But this change is normal, and also I wanted to move on. Especially the COVID time had been quite tough. Partly I had to take responsibilities, as I've said, which maybe in normal times you don't. And it was also responsibility that included responsibility for the life of 10,000 people who are working in the administration, plus our visitors. So it was a tough time. And also I had envisioned myself a future which was interesting for me, which means to go back to political content, less managerial role, which is what I'm now doing at the Martin Center or at the London School of Economics or the Catholic University of Leuven.
So it was not a sad goodbye, let's say, but...
No, the engagement always takes another form. And you also have to choose it according to your age. So 14, 15 hours, more or less every day. As Secretary General of the European Parliament, you can do up to a certain age, but then it's wiser to move this to other people.
And talking about age, if you could now bring back your younger self and look at him in the eyes, what would you tell him?
I think that my younger self would be positively surprised by the opportunities that were in fact there. You know, when you are young, you very often think that everything is occupied and the world is not for you, and will you be admitted into the system, and can you really have an impact on something? But the truth is, while you are coming in, other people are leaving the system all the time. So it's important to concentrate on your own engagement, your own qualities, where you want to go, and the space will be opening up.
Thank you. Thank you, Klaus. It was amazing talking to you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.